Lisa Welchel. You might recognize me from my time on television. Now I'm traveling the country, meeting people with the most amazing collections we can find.
When I started to fill my closet space up, and I knew that I had the collector's bug.
I bring in experts to appraise these treasures and hope to make a deal with our collector to trade one of their precious gems for an elusive item that's been on their wish list.
Maybe if you hold them, it'll feel a little more real.
Will there be a trade? It's the collector's call. Today we're with Seth, a lifelong toy collector who's amassed so many collectibles encompassing so many toy lines that he's built them a home of their own, a place he calls Toyland.
You're going to see basically the equivalent of a giant toy store, a private residence where nothing's for sale.
Joining us here is our expert John, who has his own toy store and knows an impressive collection when he sees one.
The attention to detail, the completeness, and his dedication to having as many toy lines as he can, in the condition he has, is second to none.
After traipsing through Toyland, our expert will evaluate Seth's tremendous toy collection and then try to make a deal. But will John's forward thinking entice Seth to trade any of his childhood treasures? As always, it's the collector's call. Seth, toys, toys, toys today.
Yes,
You got them here, you got them there. You have an entire shed out back where they're layered deep. How many individual toys do you have?
Somewhere around 7,000.
Oh my goodness. So I visited Toyland and it is full. So you're going to need to get another one. How did you come around getting this one?
This used to be my grandparents' house, and my grandfather was a competitive bodybuilder, and that shed was once a gymnasium for him. And he passed away, and then it became Toyland.
And it actually houses 7,000 of
Yes,
your
it
gems.
does. The collecting itself became not just obtaining the pieces, it was, boy, this would look cool on this shelf.
It really is a work of art in the way that you display it. So many of our collectors, their collection started in childhood. So I'm imagining it's also the case with you.
Without a doubt.
So when did you actually start collecting toys?
I was just out of college and was in a toy store and felt nostalgia, and I couldn't stop myself. I purchased one, and I believe it was a Star Trek The Next Generation Captain Picard figure. And now I purchased many since.
Well, we have brought John today. What makes you the expert today? Are you a toy collector? Are you general appraisal?
Actually had a real job for 17 years and I quit to open up a toy store. So I've learned to look for things like authenticity, what's real, what's custom, what's repro, and give people a really good working knowledge of what they have.
So why toys?
I've always enjoyed toys. Being kind of a history buff, in real life history kind of has a lot of synergies with doing toys because there's some fascinating backstories behind some of these things that get created. What Seth has done is created pretty much like a museum-like atmosphere. There's things here that I've actually never seen.
Well, I'm excited. I can't wait to see them. So I recognize this guy, but who are these guys?
Well, you know who that is, the $6 million man? These are two of his villains, Maskatron and Bigfoot. This figure was a villain that could rival Steve Austin with his abilities. He has interchangeable hands, different masks, you could change his identity. He even has a mask that looks like Steve himself so he can impersonate him.
Oh, that's sneaky.
And that Bigfoot figure is a villain featured in a few episodes.
So I noticed on yours, he actually has an ability to look through his bionic eye. That's supposed to be his bionic vision.
Oh, wow. Not quite eyes in the back of the head, but my eyes in the back of the head can see through the bionic eye. That is very clever.
And then Bigfoot, if you press his chest, his chest comes out to reveal his bionic underparts.
His chest was designed for Steve Austin to grab onto
and lift him up
to fight.
Wow. So are these ones that you played with as a child?
All three of these are mine from childhood.
Were you like a completist even as a 3-year-old?
I wanted to be, I think. I would have 2 or 3 figures from each of the collections and themes that I liked. Now, as an adult collector, I can fill in all those gaps, and that's part of the hunt.
I gotta tell you, the fact that these are yours is fascinating, that you have the parts. The fact that you didn't lose this?
I wasn't the type of kid that would take his figures out in the backyard and play in the mud.
Light them on fire.
No, I mean, maybe 1 or 2. I did play with all these figures. When I was done, I took care into how I put them away.
How many are in this complete set?
8 to 10 figures total.
Okay. Do you remember how much you could buy them for?
In the area of $3.99.
Wow. How much would they be worth for the complete set today?
Oh gosh. Well, the completeness on these are gonna take them like into a much different category than if you just had a bunch of loose figures. And so I'd say just what we're holding here probably is in that $800 to $900 range. And then you could buy extra arms and legs that had bionic features with fake skin that you would roll down or roll up to show his robotic parts. So you could build a $6 million collection and probably land in like the $2,500 to $3,000 range.
A $6 million collection.
Exactly.
Up next, from aliens to superheroes, Seth introduces us to some of the intact and immaculate action figures populating Toyland. And later, John's effusive in his praise for Seth's collection. But will his appraisal meet Seth's approval?
Show.
The Beverly Hillbillies.
The Beverly Hillbillies. The Beverly Hillbillies.
Watch the Beverly Hillbillies.
I like that show, especially the man who plays the father, Buddy Epstein.
Followed by Green Acres.
Doggy.
Weeknights at 9, 8 Central.
We're back as our expert goes ape over Seth's next collection. And later, will John's out-of-the-box trade idea persuade Seth to give up a collectible he's grown up with? Okay, Planet of the Apes, were these yours as well?
Not the one you're holding, but these 2 actually were. Dr. Zaius over there, he was one of my favorites as a kid. This one, General Urko, I wasn't as attached to, but he was so colorful that I made sure to get him. That one I obtained as an adult collector. I was an only child. These were my family members, so just like you would take care of Grandpa, I would take care of these figures.
So how many individual pieces are there?
There's probably 7 to 10 figures with variations. It's hard to really be a completist on variations, but I have at least one representative of maybe the 7 to 10 figures.
Okay, so 7 to 10 figures, maybe $4 to $6.
I would imagine at one point could have even been as low as maybe $1.99 to $2.99.
Okay, $15 to $40 is how much he has invested. How much would they be worth today?
Well, he's making a good return on his investment. So, like any other toy line, you get back into the completionist mentality, but the accessories on these, when you have what we call cloth goods, and then you have stuff like this, where in the 70s, they really went all out. Zira's dress, which is as quintessentially 70s as you can get. So I'm looking at things like this little piece of string still attached to that rifle. That's incredible. Like, that should have broken many years ago. All of these have everything that it should. There's no rips, there's no tears. You don't have a ton of people looking for them, but even a younger collector is going to appreciate the fact that these have all their accessories. So a complete set like this, especially in the condition they're in, $600 on a good day, you could probably do 7 or 8.
Sounds great.
That sounds really great.
Oh, wait,
Sure does.
Your ability as a small child to keep up with all these pieces and not break them. Who knew it would pay off?
It's kind of hard to believe myself.
So I've seen you have a lot of superheroes.
I sure do.
How many superhero figures do you own?
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 40, maybe. From the Mego collection, there are a few variations that I do not have. They are very sought after. All the ones that were generally released, I do have.
So what is special about these?
These are all made by the company Mego. They were able to release characters in the same collection from both DC and Marvel, which, as today would probably never fly. We have Spider-Man and the Green Goblin. The Green Goblin was released for 1 year, so he's kind of hard to come by, especially with his original bag. Other figures here by DC, obviously, are Batman and Robin.
And why are they wearing pot holders?
Oh, yes. Oven mitts, they're known as a matter of fact. Yes. It was a way for Mego to be able to have the characters have their gloves with their costume, but then be able to remove them and let them hold onto the steering wheel of the Batmobile, or be able to throw a punch.
Or take out a hot pie.
Right, exactly.
Were these yours?
These actually were mine. The ones that he's holding were not mine as childhood, and I was able to obtain those as an adult collector. They were actually the first releases of these characters. So these were kind of like a second release.
Again, it would be impossible to try to value all of those without seeing them, so how much are these worth?
Right off the bat, condition is king. Pot holders, always lost, he's got them. Mego's a fascinating company. Labeling everything as just the world's greatest superheroes. No Marvel, no DC. The other thing that they were very smart about was the cost-cutting measures always had a logic to it. They used the same body type and just changed heads. So if a particular toy failed, instead of losing the profit of those bodies, they would just pop the heads off, put whatever the next generation of figure or whatever was hot on, and move them back out into the field. Spider-Man is the most common character. Unless you get the variations on his outfit, it's probably $40 to $50. Green Goblin having his satchel is nothing short of fascinating. I'm going to say these two alone are probably going to be $700 to $800 range. What's in his hand probably around $350. So you're easily cracking $1,000 with just what we have in our hand. And like you, I got a chance to look at some of the other figures. His total Mego collection is probably close to 5 figures. I mean, everything is just perfect. It's amazing.
Who needs a 401k when you've got vintage toys? Star Trek. This started it all, right?
It sure did. As a matter of fact, thanks to my parents, I have a photograph of me just 2 years old, sitting in front of the Christmas tree, and the biggest probably smile you ever seen on a 2-year-old's face.
I love that. So, tell me about these figures.
These are also made by Mego in the 1970s.
Mego for the win.
My parents were Star Trek fans. And one of my earliest memories is just watching Star Trek, and when I went to a toy store and when Santa Claus came, these couldn't have made me any happier.
How many do you have in all?
Somewhere around 10 or 15 if you include the aliens.
And you had these from childhood?
I did have 3 of the 4 here from childhood. This one is known as the Romulan. This one I purchased as an adult collector. They released the main characters, the bridge crew. You have Mr. Spock and Captain Kirk and Dr. McCoy and Scotty and Lieutenant Uhura. But then they really wanted someone to fight with, so then they decided to later come out with some aliens for them to play with.
How long ago did you get this one?
About 15 years.
And how much did you pay for it?
Close to $300. Mego subsequently released newer versions of him, but I wanted to make sure that I have an original.
So you have the entire collection?
I do. Yes,
Okay.
I do. It is complete with every accessory original to all of the Starfleet members, plus all of the aliens that were also released.
This is really touching my heart, seeing this little boy with these tiny figures, and now this grown boy with the same kind of joy. All right, so what would you value these for, and what would you value his entire Star Trek collection?
Well, Star Trek is a funny animal because it's one of the few toy lines that the gap between the common and uncommon is almost tenfold. You have guys like Mr. Spock and Captain Kirk. You would think, well, they're the most iconic, they must be the most valuable, are actually the least valuable in the collection, ranging from $40 to $50 a piece in mint condition. Whereas the aliens are exceedingly rare, and in the condition Seth has them, probably would bring in about $1,000. So I would probably say low 2,000s to 2,500 bucks. It's not really much of a surprise to me to see that he has pretty much every Star Trek figure. But it was kind of neat to see how excited he got because apparently Star Trek was his first love.
shows off some action figures that are more heart than muscle. And later, John feels nostalgic seeing Seth's toys. But will that be enough to move Seth to make a deal?
There's more.
You can rely on to get the money you need super fast. Banks take forever to get approval, but Cashberry is different. You don't need to have Cashberry. Right. You can focus on growing your business. So visit us online to get started. Conventional banks are very reluctant to lend to restaurant owners, but with Cashberry, we got instant. Visit Cashberry online now.
We're back as Seth reveals the sentimental reason for having some of his not-so-active action figures around. And later, will John's plan to trade the nude for the nostalgic work out?
Well, these don't look like your typical action figures.
No, that's not a whole lot of action on Walton's Mountain, but my mother loved the Waltons, and my collection is kind of a tribute to her. Mama. Originally, some of these I purchased for her, and she knew I was a crazy collector, and she gave them back to me.
So these weren't yours as a child?
These were not mine as a child. It became a quest to hunt them down, and luckily enough, I was able to obtain both versions of John Boy.
Why are there two versions?
They made them with different plaid shirts, and then they made them with different hair color.
Did
and
you like bullshit one year? What was that?
I'm not 100% sure, and there was no extra charge for John Boy's Mall.
Oh my gosh, look at that. And so how much did you pay for the whole set?
Somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 to $40.
But for Mom, it's priceless.
Anything for Mom. She never fails to be interested in whatever I would like to show her.
Oh, like a good mom.
Yeah. And Dad, too.
And Dad, too.
Yes, they've always been supportive of me, and where some people ask for certain presents for their birthday, even at almost 50 years old, I ask for toys.
Oh, I love that. So how much would this be worth today?
So this is a very cute set for nostalgia purposes, but for financial purposes, not so much. I would say on any given day, most of these are probably $15 to $20 a piece. I disagree that these don't have actions. You have homespun wisdom action, you have rocking chair action.
True.
So don't sell the Walton short. But you're not buying these to get rich. You're buying them because Mom really liked them, or there's definitely a nostalgia factor. Good night, John Boy.
Okay, John, it's time for your genius to shine. So the good news is it's all displayed and it's out in Toyland, and you've got pretty good luck. Although I will have to say with Toyland, it is just like layers upon layers
It was.
of toys.
We've seen the $6 Million Man figures, the Planet of the Apes set, the Superheroes collection, the Star Trek set, and the Waltons figures.
So what would be your range that his entire collection is worth?
The depth is just insane. That said, you're kind of trying to price a unicorn. I can safely say that you've got a $100,000 collection, and it's probably closer to the 200 mark once all said and done. And it's impressive. It's beautiful. It really is. I see collections a lot. I've never seen this. The totality and the scope and how meticulous you keep it. So, well done.
You thought I asked you to do the impossible by valuing this entire collection. Now I'm asking you to really do the impossible, which is bring something he doesn't already have to make a trade for something that I'm sure you have your eye on already.
I'm actually going to ask you for two things that I had as a kid that I just haven't seen as an adult. So the first item that I want is Gregory the Bat. It was made by Mattel in the 70s. Had the blood in its chest that would pump. I had that as a kid. I am petrified of bats today. But for some reason back then, a plastic one that pumped blood was appealing to me. The other thing is the Great Garloo. It was an electronics one made in the 60s. It was something that was handed down to me and my family, so I do have a lot of cool memories of playing with it.
That one I actually just recently picked up at a local toy show, but the Gregory the Bat, that's mine from childhood.
All right, well, let's see what you're going to do to wrestle him.
I brought a long shot because he owns just about everything possible. So, in 2021, Mego made a contract with a company called Topps. They're very famous for baseball cards. So they have what's called the Mego X. These were all limited runs, except for 2 figures. So I got a complete run of 17. We have Green Arrow covering our superheroes. We have the Phantom of the Opera, along with some of his other cohorts. Kor the Klingon, and we have Mr. Spock. And then Planet of the Apes, the Mutant Leader, and George Taylor. Maybe if you hold them, it'll feel a little more real. But so this represents 6. I do have all the remaining ones. These are brand new. So in one fell swoop, you get to pick up almost the entire line of limited edition Topps X figures, and you have them all as perfect can be.
Up next on Collector's Call, John appeals to Seth's desire to collect most every toy line by offering almost every top X figure in a trade. But in return, John wants 2 special collectibles from Seth.
Next Sunday on Collector's Call.
And we got our nostalgia hits.
All in the Family and the Ed Sullivan Show. That's on the way on MeTV.
We're back as Seth decides if it's worth it to give up his Great Garloo and Gregory Bat in a trade. But if he does, he'll get to add so many more figures to Toyland.
John was interested in Great Garloo, although it was before my time, and I recently purchased it. It was still something that always needed to be in my collection. The Gregory the Bat, it holds a lot of nostalgia for me as well. I remember playing with it as a kid. I remember pumping the blood. And they really don't come up too often, so that would be difficult for me to let go of that.
Okay, so you hold these 2. Let's see if we can entice him.
Work them over.
All right, here you go. Looking pretty good. What would entice you to trade for these?
It would be really difficult for me to trade for these, and the reason why is I have these.
Of course he does.
Being
Of course
a true fan of Mego, I might have been the first one to put my pre-order in the day that they went on sale.
But what about duplicates?
I do have duplicates of many of these figures.
Wah, wah, wah. Of course he has them, and multiples.
I made sure not to miss out on the Topps promotion. As a matter of fact, this George Taylor figure, when Mego had released the initial prototypes of the figure, they had forgot to put the chain around his neck. I had put it out there in the Mego community. Perhaps he should put that around his neck. And I do believe unofficially, because of my suggestion, the figure actually does have the chain around.
So
his
not only do you own it, you inspired part of it.
As a matter of fact, I think that's true.
Well played, Seth.
But you know what? I think we did win because we got to see this today, and we got our nostalgia hits.
The nerd in me has done everything possible to just keep myself cool, calm, and collected and act professional. But the minute these cameras go off, I'm going to be dancing around in that shed.
I had an action figure of myself made. Not only does it have my likeness, but I went and made sure it had a little action figure of its own to collect.
I just love this.
And now I'll be able to display them side by side with Blair Warner.
That's right. I think they are a cute couple.
It's kind of surreal here. Like, I'm standing in my living room with Blair from The Facts of Life, and we're holding dolls of ourselves together. I mean, who would have thought this day would come?
This BTV Network.